Hello and welcome to another episode of Transcontinental Overload. I'm back from my holidays, back at my desk and ready for September, which always to me feels more like the beginning of a new year than January does, for example. And it's going to be a very, very busy September for me because my book is nearing publication. I'm hoping to put out the pre-order link within the next week or so. Still waiting on a few things, and so my hands are a little bit tied. So I'm kind of grateful that I've got this podcast to keep my mind busy. Before I go into today's episode, though, there is some housekeeping to address. As I've announced before, this podcast is going to change soon with the publication of my book, which is called Transcontinental Overload. The podcast will change because I want to keep that name, Transcontinental Overload, for all things book related. And I feel like after 5.5 years of doing this podcast, it is time for a change. I don't want to focus so much on the overload. I feel like I've written about all that in the book. And it's time for a new approach. More about this later. I'm very excited to start a new chapter with that. This episode today and the next one are still part of the old format. And funnily enough, and this wasn't planned at all, they are both about one particular topic. The topic is TCKs, and I have talked about this before. I had guests who were specializing in that or TCKs themselves before. Today's guest is a TCK, and my next guest is someone who works in that field. She's also a TCK herself. If you don't remember what a TCK is, I have a very simple definition for you. It's a child who grows up in a culture different from the one in which his or her parents grew up. And so a TCK is an individual who, having spent a significant part of their developmental years in a culture other than that of their parents, develops a sense of relationship to both. And that third culture is influenced both by their parents' culture and the culture in which they are raised. So it's not very clear cut. Basically, it just means a TCK is someone who grows up between cultures and countries, and this cross-cultural upbringing shapes their worldview no matter where they live. Next week's guest has an even better explanation, and we will go way into detail when it comes to this topic. We get all nerdy, and it's fantastic. But before we get to that one, let's meet today's guest, who I said is also a TCK. She's called Urmi and has written a book about her experience. The book is called Discovering Your Identity: A Rebirth from Interracial Struggle. And she says about herself that she is Italian by birth, Bengali by blood, and Canadian by law. Urmi lives in Montreal, where she has a regular 9-to-5 job, but she definitely also has a 5-to-9 job. She's a blogger, YouTuber, an author, speaker, a female mentor, and an advocate for women's empowerment, as well as the social media lead for Women in Leadership, and the campaign manager for Femme Influence. Or maybe Femme Influence. And now I realize I should have asked Urmi because I don't know whether it's pronounced the French or the English way. Anyway, I will put the link in the show notes. Femme Influence is a non-profit organization committed to empowering young women through education and resources with a focus on gender-based violence and women's health. So in short, Urmi is a very busy lady. But let's have her tell us all this herself. Here is Urmi's story. Welcome, Urmi, to Transcontinental Overload. So happy to have you here on a Friday evening.
Yes, thank you for having me.
I'm really excited to hear your story. I just read your book, Discovering Your Identity: A Rebirth from Interracial Struggle. And it's a very small book, so I read it in one go. And it almost felt like a little summary of a bigger book that's to come. I feel like you have a lot of stories that you could definitely elaborate on. So I'm excited to hear some of them today.
Yes, I'm very excited to share them.
So why don't we start with where you are, where you're calling from today, and then let's go all the way back to your story, and maybe even start with talking about what made you write your book.
Okay, so let's start with where I am. So basically, I am calling from Montreal, Canada, and I've been living in Montreal for quite some time. I do have the Canadian citizenship, so it's been a while. And to go back to my beginnings go far back to Italy. So I was born and raised in Italy, and both of my parents are from Bangladesh. And I consider myself a third culture kid. So I always tell people I am Italian by birth, Bengali by blood, and which I think summarizes really well my identity. That's who I am. And I have self-published a book in 2022, which is the book that you have read. And this is my own journey in Italy as a third culture kid, where I talk about what it was for me to grow up and what it was for me to live in a country that was completely, I want to say, different from the culture that I was growing up at home. Because both the Bengali and the Italian cultures can be very similar, but can also be very different from and another. And growing up in a South Asian household where your parents are very strict and very, conservative, they had a different kind of idea of how they wanted to raise their kids. But also, if we take into consideration that we're in a Western world, we are in the Western society, there should be an expectation that
Mhm.
as someone who's born in Italy will integrate eventually to the society and the community over there. And so the book is really my own journey, my own reflection, and I pretty much talk about my childhood and teenagehood in Italy.
Yeah, so many questions already because your experience is very different to maybe other TCKs. For example, my children who came with us, and we hadn't planned to immigrate to the US, so that's a whole different starting point. Reading your book, it didn't sound like your parents really thought about what it would be like to raise a child in another culture,
Mhm.
and they tried to do what they would have done back at home in Bangladesh. And
Yes,
then
yes,
they seemed to be very surprised that you basically were an Italian child and not as Bengali as they thought you would be.
that's right.
And my impression from the book was that they weren't prepared for for
Yes,
what happened.
they weren't. They definitely weren't, and I don't think they are even now. I don't think they are because there. I think I mentioned it also in the book. There are things that I was told, as especially when I was a kid, where maybe I would behave out like
Mhm,
quotation marks, maybe too Italian. And I would always hear things
mhm,
from my parents being like, "Oh, do you think of yourself Italian? Do you think you're Italian? Just because you hang out with Italian people, it doesn't make you Italian. You're becoming like a bad girl and things like that." And even nowadays, I feel like I hear the same story. Like, they tell me things like, "Oh, but you're Bengali. No, you're a Bengali girl, like one of us." And I'm thinking,
mhm.
no, I'm not. I'm not just that.
But I think this is the experience that someone who hasn't had that same journey or even origin can empathize with. It's almost like because they were both Bengali, they, of course, you are Bengali to them,
Yes.
but you were born in Italy, which meant that you had an Italian side to you from the
Hmm.
beginning. So you were born with that passport.
Exactly. Yeah.
And I think you write in your book that blood doesn't make you be part of that culture. I mean, it makes you part of that culture, but it's not your identity. Your identity is much more than that.
Yes, and I think that your identity is pretty much developed through the different exposure that you get throughout your life. It's not just because I'm born here, I am only that. Because especially with our culture kids, like if you keep moving around your childhood and teenagehood and you are in different countries, then you're exposed to different cultures. And so your identity is a bit blurred, I feel. Like
Mm-hmm.
it's not clear what your identity is. Like I think a lot of people if they ask that question, they'll be like, I'm not quite sure, because I grew up here, I lived here, I
Yeah.
studied here, I worked here. It becomes very complex at some point.
And
I
also,
feel.
it's your identity is very unique to you yourself. So it's not like, no one has the same identity, right? And we don't feel the same way about that. And your nationality, your passport doesn't give you your identity. It's part of it,
Yeah.
of what makes you you, but it's not. It's the overall experience. And I always feel like my identity is constantly changing in some
Yeah.
ways. It's a fluid thing. It's not determined by where I was born, or where I lived, or where I was happiest. It's just all of these things together. I don't feel particularly German when people say about you're German, and I was like, I haven't lived there for a very long time, but it's part of me. So it is part of my identity, but it's not all of it.
Yeah. And I think it's up to you to decide that, like I feel like people
Very
te
much.
tend to decide for us. And I'm like, you're not deciding for me. I'm deciding for myself what I am. I know my own
Yeah.
story better than you.
Yeah.
And also like going back to this whole thing about nationality and passport, like I have the Canadian passport and the Italian passport by law. I don't
Mm-hmm.
have the Bengali passport, but if you ask me what my identity is, I will tell you I'm Italian Bengali, and I never say I'm Canadian. I don't say it yet. Maybe
Mm-hmm.
one day I will, but it's
Mm-hmm.
it's just what you're more comfortable with.
Yeah, of course. So describe how your like early childhood, how that was for you. Because so did your parents speak Italian?
Uh, no, I mean yes and no. Meaning that my mom never learned the language. She pretty much relied on me and my sister to do
Mm-hmm.
most of the translation.
So your mum was a homemaker,
That's
and
it.
so she didn't have to learn Italian for work, which I think
That's
is
it.
is always a very crucial thing that separates people from their surroundings.
Yes. So she didn't learn the language. She was basically a stay-at-home mom. And when I was born and my sister was born, when we were old enough, we would do all the translation for her. She was good enough to still, move around, do basic things like grocery and stuff like that. But for more complicated stuff, she always relied on us. So let's say when we were going to the doctor or when we had to read a letter and stuff like that. For my father, it was a bit different. He actually did everything to learn the language. He took classes and he learned the language properly. He even like learned how to drive. So you have to know the language. Like there's no way. And then of course he was working. So he made the effort to learn the language. And indeed, people would come to him for translation at some point. Like people from the community, he was the point of reference for a lot of like bureaucratic stuff and translating
Yeah.
things, learning how to do things in a country that is completely foreign to everyone. Yeah,
So when you say community, you're talking about the Bengali community in Italy.
that's right.
So
That's
so
right.
your parents found, did they have people there already, or how did they find their community?
No, there was no community when they moved. When they moved the first time in Italy, I would say they were probably the first ones who moved there. And then I think they somehow created that community. So little by little, like
Mhm.
like my uncle came, and then other people came, and that's how the community was formed.
Okay.
Yeah.
And where in Italy did you
But
grow up?
um, good question. It was Palermo.
Okay. So that's quite an important part as well, because that's Sicily, that's an island, that's not even the mainland, or not even the like industrialized north, where you would expect a more international crowd.
Yes, especially back in the days, like there's only so much that I can remember from those early days because I was also really young. We had a very small community of Bengali people, and then
Hmm.
we had like there were no other immigrants around me. I felt like it was very hard for me to see people that look like me when I went to
Yes.
school. It was hard to make friends that look like me. I just remember there was one neighbor who was, I think, from Egypt, and I think that was the only diverse thing that I saw,
Hmm.
at
Hmm.
least back in the 90s and early 2000.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And how was that? Because you were essentially Italian. You were I mean, going to school and being socialized in an Italian environment, and yet your home life was very Bengali.
Yes, yes, very Bengali. So when I went to, especially during my elementary school, I was very well integrated. Although I do have very vivid memories of a lot of things, and I still remember this, like seeing nuns at school, seeing the church at school, seeing the crucifix in my classroom. Things that were completely new to me, you
Southern
know?
Italy, especially, very Catholic.
Yes.
Mhm.
So it was very new to me, but very interesting at the same time because I was always so curious of seeing, like, I would see the nuns walking around and I always wonder, who are they? You know,
Mhm.
like no one ever explained it to me.
So your parents kind of left you to find out by yourself or school and friends.
Yeah, yeah, they told me that, oh, we belong to a
Mhm.
different faith. We don't do the things that other people do. We don't eat the same things that people do. We don't drink the same way that people do. And I just knew that nuns were just religious figures, but I had no clue about what their role was, what they were
Mhm.
doing. I would see in the morning, I would see people in the church sitting down on their knees and praying. I was very curious to enter in, to be honest. I never
Yeah.
did. I never did. I always wanted to enter that church and see what was going on. And I was also forbidden from taking religious classes. Like that was a big no,
Oh,
big
really? I
no,
was just going to ask what that was like at school.
big no.
Okay. So there was no way for you to really find out.
No, it was a big no, especially in my early years, in
Mhm.
my when I was in high school and I was a teenager. Again, I was told not to attend the classes, but I still did.
Well,
I
yeah.
still did.
I mean,
I still did.
well, you kind of have to because it's part of your culture. And
Yeah,
it's
no,
that must have been really hard at times to be like, to feel like your culture is different to your parents. How much were you trying to learn about Bengali culture? How open were you to that? Do you feel like, because as a child, I just imagine that you feel must have felt so confused.
I was. I was confused and I was never doing anything to learn it. I had zero interest, if I have to tell you just the truth.
In the
And
Bengali culture.
to
Mm.
the Bengali culture, yes.
Mhm.
And then at some point, someone once asked me, "Oh, what is one thing that you don't like about your culture, or what is this one thing that I don't know, something?" Someone was asking me a question, and then I said, "Oh, I don't like the Bengali cuisine." And my dad was there, and my dad was there, and I think I was 14 at that time. And then my dad was there, and when we went back home, he was just yelling at me, lecturing me. He was like, "No, the Bengali cuisine it's our symbol of the culture. Why did you say
Yeah.
that?" But the reality was that I was just being honest. I just didn't like eating spicy food. So for me, it was my favorite food is Italian food. And so when I said that, I remember being lectured for saying that particular sentence. But now that I'm much older, if I have to be honest, I wish I took time to learn a bit more about the Bengali literature. I
Yeah.
wish I learned proper Bengali. Like I speak it and everything, but I wish I'm able to write it and read it, which I'm not capable of. Um, I wish I learned a bit more. And the only thing that I really know is pretty much the history of how Bangladesh
Mhm.
was part of India and Pakistan. But there's a bit more that I wish I knew about, Bangladesh. But now I'm much older, so I understand better. But when I was a kid, I think I was neglecting that side of me.
Yeah, well, also you were because you were rebelling. And that's kind
Yes.
of, I think it's a very normal thing. And I know so many people, older people who are either really angry with their parents for not teaching them the language, because that's also a big immigrant story of people. I know, like, I've spoken to people here who've immigrated also from Italy to New Jersey, is very Italian. Um, and but never learned Italian because their parents, from the moment they set foot here, were like, we are not speaking Italian, we're speaking English. And so the kids never learned Italian. And then as you get older, you get a bit resentful because it's like, because
Yes.
language is culture and it's access to culture. It's not all of culture, but it's a big access point and a big identifier. And to be able to speak several languages is amazing.
Yeah. There was a time when I was a child. I don't remember now. I think we went to Bangladesh for a longer time,
Hmm.
and I was enrolled to go to school. But I have a very bad memory of it, very bad.
Mm.
I remember I went to this school and then I brought my lunch, and then someone stole my lunch. And since then, that's all I remember from this experience. I think it's just
How
like
old were
it just
you? Do you remember how old you were?
very,
Or
I think I was less than 10. Yes, and there was that fear that someone was going to bully me. There was really that fear. And it was strictly Bengali, the school just in Bangladesh, only
yeah.
Bengali people, but I remember not being happy there.
Was that the only time you went, or have you been more than once?
No, I went 4 times. Last
Hmm.
time was in 2010 and I never went back.
Okay.
Yeah.
So that was you were already a little bit older and
Yeah. Yeah. I was 19 when I went last
yeah.
time.
Okay. How did that feel? Because you must have been a little bit more like, okay, this is part of my culture. Were you more interested, or did you feel completely alienated?
So I was more interested when I went the third time. And I was, I think, 15.
Hmm.
And we went there for 3 weeks, I think, and I think I enjoyed it a bit more than my first 2 times, also because I was a bit older. And at that moment, I feel like I saw different things, and
Hmm.
I feel like I was a teenager, so I was having a bit more fun. And I was appreciating the little things. Like I was always
Hmm.
observing a lot of stuff that was happening. Like we lived in a village, and I could see how people were just happy with pretty much nothing. I could
Hmm.
see people walking in the rain, dancing in the rain, being happy. Um, I remember things being everything being very rural, like to go from one place to another. You just had to go through the villages, through small towns, small roads. I remember the cows that we had in our villages and stuff like that. But then when I went the last time, it was different, and I don't know if I liked it because people know it. People know it that I'm not from the place. They recognize it
And so
right away.
that was going to be my next question. How was were you received? How did people react to you? Because you look Bengali, but you're clearly not. So how was that?
So people know it. As soon as you land, you get off from the plane, people
Hmm.
know it that you're not from the place. People recognize it. And I don't know what it is. I don't know if it's I don't know. I really do not know what it is, but they know it that you're not from there. So they
Hmm.
know that you're the foreigner coming from abroad.
Yeah.
And so the problem is that people start asking you for money. You have a lot of beggars coming to you because they know that this is the problem. They perceive that whoever comes from abroad is
Hmm.
like rich. And so there's this perception. I remember living in the city this time, and the electricity kept going away every, like, I don't know, half an hour. It was damn hot. And I felt the city was a bit more developed this time in a
Hmm.
certain way. But the problem is that I get really sick every time I go back because everything is different. The food is different, the water is different. So I get easily sick. So that doesn't make my experience enjoyable.
Yeah. Did you see family and stay with family? Was this kind of the part of you going back, kind of back to the roots, and your parents encouraging that?
Yes, they were there too, actually. And yes, that's it. You go back to the roots and
Hmm.
learn more about your roots, and they introduce you to all these family members that you didn't think existed. And suddenly you have, I don't know, 17 cousins out of nowhere. Um, my uncles and aunts. I do have like relatives in Bangladesh, but I would say most of them are in the UK. So a lot of them
Hmm.
have actually moved and spread different parts of the world. Um, but definitely, yes, it was going back to the roots, but I don't know, I just don't have the experience I wish I had as I'm visiting other countries.
Hmm.
Yeah,
Do you think you'll ever go back?
no, no.
So you don't feel the need to have another experience, or maybe a more positive experience?
I don't see myself going there anytime soon. I don't see myself going there permanently, and going there as a visitor, if it
Mhm.
happens, it will happen maybe, but I'm not gonna go out of my way to do it.
Yeah. Yeah.
No. I don't feel that attachment because my
Mhm.
attachment is to Italy, the place where I grew up, where I have most of my memories. This is what I feel is home, Italy, not Bangladesh. It's not my home. It's not. It's
Yeah.
not.
And how do your parents feel about this now? Now that you're older and you made another leap across the ocean and you didn't stay in Italy, you left, and we'll come to that. But how do your parents feel about that?
So here's the thing. They do want me to go and visit Bangladesh time to time. They're like, oh,
Hmm.
you should put a visa in your passport so you can go and visit it. I'm like, no, 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 that's not happening. And yes, so now my parents, they live in the UK, I live in Canada, and I mean, they're pretty much okay with it. They do ask me to go and visit them time to time. Actually, they asked me to go to visit them in the UK rather than
Hmm.
going to Bangladesh because that's where they live. And
Yeah.
that's where I have most of my relatives. And honestly, going to the UK, it's like going to Bangladesh. It's the same exact thing. Exact thing.
That's
It's the
so
same.
crazy. Yeah, let's talk about your UK experience because you did spend some time in the UK as well growing up.
Yes, I lived in the UK for a year, and it was an amazing experience back in the days. If you ask me,
How
I
old were you
was
then?
13.
Okay. Which is a hugely influential period in your life because it's kind of the you're no longer a child, you kind of
Yeah.
you become a teenager, and then I think all middle school, high school experiences are so much more impactful. What was the idea to move to the UK permanently from Italy?
Initially, yes.
Hmm.
And then we came back, and it was pretty sad, I have to say. I was not happy when we came back. But now when I
I can
reflect up,
imagine.
yeah, when I reflect upon it, I'm like, good thing we came back, and good thing I'm not living in the UK because UK gave me a different perspective when I was 13 years old, and I kind of enjoyed it because there was
Hmm.
a lot more Bengali people. I went to a school and there were a lot more diversity. I had Bengali friends, Indian friends,
Hmm.
Pakistani friends, and I felt like I felt understood and I enjoyed it. And I feel like I had less restriction. I had a bit more freedom. I was hanging out with Bengali friends. So there was a different perception from my parents.
So do you think it's because of the your environment was more Bengali, but the children were raised in the UK, so they were a little bit more um maybe liberal is not the word, but just a little bit less restrictive because of the UK environment. And then because you were there and your parents were part of that community there, then they kind of had to let you join the kids with a little bit more freedom.
I'm assuming yes. Like I had a neighbor, she was Bengali, but she's very similar to me. Like she did not have any Bengali friends before that. I was probably her first Bengali friend, and I would spend my afternoons with her, and there was never an issue. Like literally every afternoon it was spent together. So I'm assuming because of a better perception of who you spend your time with, I think my
Mhm.
parents did not care too much. And also I never showed up with like a British friend or something like that. So they never worried about anything. Like I feel like if I was hanging out with with non-Bengalis, they would have probably have said something. I
Mhm.
think. I
Yeah.
think. And so my experience in the UK was great. I learned English when I was living there. I enjoyed every part of it. And I feel like I was more exposed to the Bengali side, which was something that I was missing back in Italy. And when we had to move back to Italy, it was hard because I was like, I wasn't ready for this.
So you were 14 then. And I mean, again, like I said earlier, this is such a crucial age, and you make some connections that you, at the time, think are everything. And like your friends, when you're 13, 14, it's it's who you are, and you're kind of becoming, you're starting to think about things like identity and who am I? And because I think before that, it's just not really part of your conscious. yeah, who am I doesn't really come in, but 13, 14 certainly does. And then that
Yes.
must have been really hard to be like, oh, and then you were new again.
I was new again because we moved to a different parts of Italy. We were living in Milan, and even there I was like, oh my gosh, I have to start from scratch. I have to make new
Yeah, of
friends.
course.
And I was not happy about the idea, even though Italy was my place of birth.
Hmm.
But we stayed in Milan for 5 years, and it was in those particular years that I was neglecting as much as possible the Bengali side. I was
Yeah.
neglecting it because I just had, again, too many restrictions. I was not allowed to have the typical teenage life that every single teenage person
Hmm.
has. Like, people would go clubbing, go to the cinema, like, typical normal stuff that we do. I couldn't do any of these things. And me being the person that I am, I would never go against anyone. So I would just do the things that I would do as I was being told. And um, like I remember a lot of the things I had to do them like behind my parents' back. And it wasn't even nothing major. Like I would go maybe, let's say, to the mall with a friend or stuff like that. But I was being told, like, don't hang out with like bad people, don't have a
Hmm.
boyfriend, this and that. And I was like, I don't like it. And every time I used to hear the same expression, what will people say? What will people say if you keep doing these things? Because it was always about people.
Hmm.
But if you ask me now what were my best years, I would tell you it was pretty much from 14 years old onwards, because all of my high school friends are my closest friends nowadays. We are still friends. We talk to each other as if like I never left. And the people who understand me the most are my Italian friends that I made when I was 14 years old.
And how did they at the time, how was it for them? Because, I mean, you're a girl, 14 years old, you come back. I mean, it's hard making friends, but it's also really easy because it's just a time where you share a lot of time together. Like school is more or less all day. And how was it for them to be friends with you, knowing that you are not allowed to join in with everything? And did you kind of exclude them from all that, or did you tell them and moan about your parents and your background to them?
I would tell them the reason why I couldn't,
Hmm.
because I feel like they needed to know and I owed them an explanation and I
Hmm.
wanted them to know the truth. And it was also new to them because they didn't have a Bengali friend before me. Like
Yeah.
again, in high school, there were not that many Bengali friends. So it was also a learning process for them. I was trying to educate them and I was telling them why it was like that for me. But
Hmm.
this is very particular to people who are of my age. Like I feel like kids nowadays, Bengali kids born in Canada or in Italy, they have a completely different experience. I think parents are a bit more liberal in a sense. They don't care too much about who they're hanging out and so forth. But for me, it was different because there's always a fear that you get brainwashed and you become something that your parents do not want you to. And so for them, it was a learning process and they
Hmm.
accepted it. They were like, okay, we understand how you're feeling. And so every time we would do something, we would try to finish it a bit earlier. I would always tell them, make sure there are no boys, whatever we do. I don't want to get caught in doing something bad. And so it was I feel like they treasure those moments where they really had to learn a bit more about me. Yes.
Hmm. I love that you say that they're your best friends still,
Yes.
and you're in touch with them. I mean, that must mean that they were willing to do that, which
Yes.
also shows how amazing kids are and how, when people talk about immigrants and integration, and the kids don't have an issue. Kids don't have an
No.
issue with this. It's really coming from above.
Yes.
And I think people are creating much more. Not It's not to say that it doesn't exist, and obviously, there's kids, mean kids, and bullying and all that going on too. But I think in terms of cultures and acceptance, it's
Yes.
it's not a it's not an issue for kids.
Yes. And even for my professors,
Hmm.
it was not an issue. They were always so curious to learn about me, my,
Hmm.
my background. That they were
Yeah.
always, always super curious, super welcoming. I think they were very much fascinated at some time to time. I was like, oh wow, I
Hmm.
didn't think that it was that interesting. But yeah, it was. I had a very different experience because my sister, she also went to my same high school, but she had a
Mhm.
completely different experience as well than mine. Yeah.
Was she younger?
She was younger, 5 years younger. So her experience was different. She had Bengali friends at school, and
Hmm.
she used to tell me that some people would bully some of her friends because they were
Bengali.
Bengalis.
Okay. Do you think that the experience, the positive reception that you had and the interest that was shown to you, did that make you feel more proud of your Bengali culture, or did that even maybe make you more interested? Did that help in that respect?
I don't know. I don't know. I never felt people definitely saw me as an interesting person
Hmm.
and always very curious about my background, but I myself never felt like I was any interesting or different. And no one made me feel like otherwise. They always saw me as Italian as well, like
Yeah.
them.
And that's who you were.
Yeah.
I mean, that makes sense because I feel like it might, that's why I asked if it made you more interested in your Bengali roots, because it's like, because you didn't have that. So it's almost like people find you fascinating because of it, but you're like, well, but I don't know anything about it. It's not really who I am. So that's kind of a weird way to be. Much like people ask me sometimes about whatever German cultural thing that is more recent. And I'm like, I'm sorry, I can't tell you anything about this because I haven't lived there for 25 years. And so it's like, you
Yes.
ask me what Germany is like, and I'm
Yeah.
like, I don't really know.
There were times where people would ask me questions and I had zero clue. And so there was this one particular moment, I was in high school and I think there was a flood, I think, in Bangladesh or an earthquake, one of the two. And then someone was like, "Oh, how are your relatives doing? Are they okay?"
Mm-hmm.
But the thing is, I had like no clue about where the earthquake happened. I had no clue about anything. And I was like, "Yeah, I think they're fine." That's what I said.
Again, this is a normal teenage behavior. You're an Italian teenager living in Italy, trying to be as Italian as you can be. So, at what point did you feel like I need to get out and I need to go somewhere else?
Well, it came when I moved to Canada, pretty much, when I was 19 years old. And I feel like it's only when I moved to Canada that I think I did a much deeper work on my identity.
Hmm.
Because going back to Italy, like I was trying to be as Italian as possible. So there were a few examples where on a Saturday we would go for grocery shopping or to the shopping mall, and my dad would always tell me, "Why don't you wear the typical traditional, c- outfit or clothes?" And
Hmm.
I was always like, "I don't want to do this, because I don't want people to stare at me. I don't want to bump into my friends." And I remember always wearing like Western clothes. And then at some point, my dad was like, "No, why don't you wear this?" And I remember always feeling shy about it.
Hmm.
Always shy. I didn't want people to see me, especially my friends. And what happened is, well, when I moved to the U to Canada, and I started to understand a bit more my identity and who I am, now I don't shy away from it. Like
Do you wear traditional Bengali
yes.
clothing?
I do, and I grow even proud of my identity, like of my
Hmm.
Bengali side. But it's also because I chose what I want from this side of it. Yes, I had this very strict upbringing in a sense, and there was a side of me that wanted to neglect that. But I needed the Bengali side because I can never take away that side from me. It's ingrained in me, it's in my blood. And so I
And you
embrace.
wear it on your skin.
I exactly. Yes, I can't deny it. And I go proud of my roots, if I have to
Hmm.
tell you the truth. I proudly wear my traditional Bengali outfits. I I see there is beauty in it. And the same thing with the Bengali cuisine. Okay, I used to not like it. Um, but I do think that Bengali cuisine is very tasty now that I'm much older, because I can see how a lot of non-Bengali people who eat our food, they really, really enjoy it. And I was like, damn, okay, I should see this differently, even though Italian is still my favorite food.
Well, I
But
mean, it's Italian food is hard to beat. I mean,
it's so
let's
good.
be let's be
It's just
honest.
so good. You can't beat it. Like you said,
Yeah,
it's so good. It's so
yeah,
good. It's so easy
yeah.
to make as well. Like you just need few things and boom. So, so now I embrace both my Italian side and my Bengali side, and I just pick and choose the good thing of
Mhm.
each side,
Did you ever
basically.
learn to cook Bengali cuisine? How was that when you grew up? Was your I kind of just imagine your mum trying to teach you stuff and you going like, "No, I just want pasta. I'm sorry, I don't want this."
And that was exactly how it was. That's exactly how it was.
Yeah.
I would come back from school, and after a heavy day, I was just expecting a nice plate of pasta ready at the table. And sometimes I would see rice and curry, and I would start a fight because of that. But now I learned, or I'm learning as time goes by, how to make Bengali cuisine. I usually use YouTube for recipes. Um, but I feel like it's an art to make Bengali food because we just use so many spices that sometimes it's not obvious for me. So it's an art. You need to know how to mix and match the different types of spices and how much of this, how much of
Mhm.
that. And it's very colorful in a way, like because we eat like fish curry and you have different kinds of fish. We eat chicken and you can make the chicken in so many different
Mhm.
ways. The rice can be made in so many different ways. Beef curry can be made in so many different ways. Then you have the veggies, you have herb curry. Like there's so many
Mhm.
different things that we can do. And sometimes I really admire people that know how to make it properly because I'm
Yeah.
like, I wish I was this good at making this kind of food. Yeah.
Does how does your mum feel now? I mean, when she hears you say this, she'll probably be like, "Well, I tried."
Yeah, no, she doesn't know about this because I'm gonna get yelled at. I'm telling you, it's a guarantee.
But it is nice. I mean, regardless of what her thoughts on this are or how she will react, I love that you discovered that for yourself, that you can kind of approach the culture through the food in some ways and appreciate it for what it is, and kind of forgive your younger self for being, for rejecting it. Maybe that's just a
Yeah.
normal thing that happens.
Yeah, so for me it was more I was more into making pasta.
Mm.
I was always up for making pasta. And even nowadays, like when I make pasta, I'm so passionate about it. Like I
Hmm.
just make it with so much love and intention. And I can see how my love is transferring the pasta because then the pasta just tastes so good. And I'm always looking for like recipes to make pasta.
Yeah.
That's one thing that I enjoy making, and I always enjoyed making even when I was a kid.
So let's come back to the to your beginnings in Canada. So you what made you decide to go to Canada in the first place?
It was mainly for personal reasons that I have moved here. Then I did my university here.
Hmm.
I graduated, I started to work, and like and now I'm pretty much settled here. I have even the Canadian citizenship. So
Hmm. So how did you feel with your new friends in Canada? Obviously, you get asked where are you from?
yeah, it's a struggle.
How do you answer that question? Because it's not a straightforward one, is it?
It's not. It's not a straightforward answer.
Or
At the
do you do
beginning,
the same? You do the I'm Italian, but I'm Bengali by blood?
uh, now, yes, now I say Italian by birth and Bengali
Hmm.
by blood. But before I used to say I'm Bengali and people would just stare at me because they could see the Italian accent coming from my English. And then I was like, okay, I'm just gonna say I'm Italian going forward. And then they would still stare at me.
Hmm.
And so what happened is I started to really spend 30 minutes explaining my history each time. And then I
Hmm.
got sick of it. I really got sick
Yeah.
of it because I was like,
Yes, of course.
I can't go on and
Hmm.
explain this each time. I always say I'm Italian Bengali. And then if they want to ask for the question, I let them ask me.
Hmm.
And making friends in Canada, let me tell you this, it's my circle of friends are very different in Canada. with respect to what I had in Italy, because in Italy, the circle of friends were just strictly
Hmm.
Italian. In Canada is a lot more diverse because I
Hmm.
have like people who are from China, I have people who are from Korea, I have people who are from Mexico, I have people from Yemen. I really have a friend from a different part of the world, and I don't have Bengali friends. I don't. And I have few friends with Italian origins, but they're Italians born here,
Hmm.
not in Italy. So that's also different. Like I'm able to connect a bit more if you have lived in Italy and then moved to Canada.
Would you say mainly through, was that through university that you made the friends? Because there is just something about university being this place where everyone is new. And I feel like people who moved there from other places, you recognize each other. So that unites. And a lot of TCKs actually say that they automatically just make friends with all the other outsiders, all the other newbies. And that's just that sense of community um, that exists because of the shared experience.
Yes.
Regardless of where you were born, it's just that shared experience of being an outsider trying to fit in.
Yes. And that's it. That's what you like you basically hit the nail. Like it's we all come from a completely different place, and that what makes it easy, I would say, because I remember when I was trying to, I don't remember having friends from Canada, to be honest. And I still don't think I have friends who are from Canada, who are like Canadian by blood.
Mm-hmm.
I think I think those few times that I have encountered people who are from Canada, I felt it was different. It was just
Mm-hmm.
different. I was able to easily connect with people that were more international.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And how is that now? Let's talk a little bit about your work because obviously you're not at university anymore, but you're working in an international field, or do you work mostly with Canadians?
Mostly with Canadians. So yeah, starting off with my boss, who is very Canadian, but I always say he's Italian because he's married to an Italian woman. So I feel like he's more Italian than any other person in this world.
Mm-hmm.
And then the other co-workers that I have, they have different origins, meaning that they're born in Canada, but their parents come from a different country.
Mm-hmm.
So even
Okay.
that, it's I'm able to connect a bit more. I also have colleagues who have Italian origins but are born here. I have colleagues who are from China who are born in Montreal. So these are people that do have a different exposure, like in a
Mm-hmm.
certain way, they do have another exposure, but they're mainly born and raised in
Mm-hmm.
Canada.
And what is it that you do?
I work in the wealth management. So I basically work
Finance.
in finance. Yes, basically
Mm-hmm.
finance. And we manage the portfolios of our clients and we help them to achieve their financial goals.
And what are your other passions? You contacted me on Instagram and then I looked at your background and all you're wearing quite a lot of hats. So, and then I think when we first met on Zoom and I said to you, you seem to be a very busy lady.
I am.
So yeah,
I am.
let's talk
I
about that.
am. I am a very busy lady. I like to be a busy lady. So there is my 9 to 5, which is me working in finance, but then I have what I call the 5 to 9, where I dedicate the time to my passions, and I have way too many. So I am a self-published author. So we spoke about the book. I have a YouTube channel, so I'm a YouTuber. I love learning languages, so I'm a big learner when it comes to languages. I am part of the organization called Women in Leadership, where
Mhm.
I run the social media accounts and I do like Instagram lives. I promote the work that we do in terms of the organization. I also blog time to time. I write for different organizations about different topics. Usually it could be about, mentoring. I talk about confidence. I am also a mentor, a female mentor, and mentoring is part of my identity. I have been mentoring for the past 5 years, and I mentor women of color. I mentor women from different parts of their lives and different paths.
Do you feel like your own experience of being a TCK and dealing with rejection and strict background and all that has made you interested in this and is kind of fueling your passion when it comes
A,
to especially empowering women?
a little bit, because I feel like I did not have a mentor when I was growing up.
Hmm.
So I became the mentor I never
Yeah.
had.
Yeah.
And um and also the whole thing with in relation to women's empowerment, I can see how women are seen in the South Asian community, and I don't like it. And
Hmm.
so my job is really to change the narrative.
So the South Asian community just meaning
Bengali,
Pakistani,
Indian,
Indian.
Pakistani, yeah,
Hmm.
yeah,
Do you feel like
mainly.
that's all a very similar background and the way people are raising their children even when they move to other countries?
Yes and no. It depends on your level of integration afterwards.
Hmm.
Because I can see girls of my age who were raised in Canada are pretty different than me.
Hmm. So you don't, and you said earlier you don't really have any other Bengali friends or
No.
South Asian friends.
South Asian friends, I have some, but we're not close.
Hmm.
I know them, but it's not someone that I would go and confide myself, for
Hmm.
instance. Yeah. I think I always look for someone who's very similar to me in terms of having multiple backgrounds. So
Hmm.
one of my closest friends, she is Indian, but she's very similar to me in the sense that she was born in Europe, she grew up in a certain place, and then she moved to Canada. So we can relate to each other really well.
Hmm.
Yeah.
So you're a kind of a warrior, a fighter. That's your main, I mean, your main driving force. So you said changing the perspective, changing the attitude towards South Asian women in particular.
In particular, yes, because I feel like sometimes families see daughters as a
Hmm.
financial burden, and also because we're always told that our accomplishment in life is to really get married and have kids and be a housewife. But I think there's a lot more to that, and there's a lot of gender biases, meaning that if you are a boy, your life is pretty nice, I would say. It's
Yeah,
pretty different.
yeah.
And if
Yeah,
you're a
you write
woman,
about that in your book where you say you were never allowed to go on any school trips to other countries or cities or anything like that, and you are pretty certain that had you been a boy, your
it would
parents
have,
would have let you. Yeah,
yes, I'm
yeah.
pretty sure. I have no doubts.
Hmm.
I have no doubts.
Yeah.
Yeah, no doubts about it. So yeah, it's just unfair. It's just unfair.
So your background is basically um, fueling this passion a lot and trying to kind of open minds and make it easier for women like yourself to move on and move forward. And like you said earlier, that it is getting better and it's getting people are opening up a little bit, but I can imagine it takes another generation probably to to do that,
Probably,
or
unfortunately.
several. Yeah, yeah,
Several, yes, yes.
yeah. Well, thank you so much, Urmi. What a story. And I love all your insights and also the reflections that you have on you as a child and appreciating how you looked at things differently when you were younger to now. Um, then I think we could wrap it up. I will ask you the question that I ask every single one of my guests. What do you do when you're homesick? Is there anything we talked about food, but is there anything that you do maybe when you miss, I want to say Italy, because Italy's home. Is there anything particular that you do?
It's all related to food, pretty much. It's all related to food. When I feel homesick, there is this grocery store that I usually go to because they import everything from Italy, and I just love walking inside the place and seeing everything that it's from Italy. They bring basically like cheese, They bring olive oil. So I just walk in there, seeing the different kinds of cheese, the different kinds of olive oil, and then they leave the piece of bread so you can like dip your like your bread in the olive oil, and just buying things from there makes me feel like I'm at home. And the people who work there are actually Italian, so I just start mingling with them in Italian. That's one thing I do. And the other thing that I do, which always makes me feel very homesick, is when I used to live in Italy, I used to eat a chocolate croissant every time I was going to school on a Saturday, because we used to go to school on a Saturday. And nowadays, when I feel homesick, I go and buy a croissant and try to remind myself of those times. So those are a few things I do.
Yeah, beautiful. And then my very last question, are you learning anything right now? Is there anything new?
I am working on my Spanish. That's one thing I'm learning. Although it's not really like learning from scratch, because I did take some classes, but it's a work in progress.
Yeah.
And so I'm working on my Spanish. I want to master it and be able to speak it. So yeah.
Excellent. I love it. I love learning languages.
Yes.
Well, thank you so much for your time. This was fun.
Yes. Thank
So
you.
interesting to hear different perspectives. And when is the next time you go to Italy?
I don't know, but I hope soon. Last time was last year, and I keep thinking, when am I going back?
Oh yeah, you've got to go back.
Yes, I hope soon. I miss it. I miss home.
Yeah, I'll keep my fingers crossed. Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Take care. Bye. So that was my chat with Urmi. I hope you found it interesting. I certainly did. I love hearing all the different perspectives, especially as the parent to two TCKs. There's so much value in listening to someone's experience who didn't have a choice in the move. Parenting TCKs is a very interesting topic, and there are so many thoughts and decisions that you have to make when you decide to move to another country, when you have kids. And of course, not everybody is in a position to really think about what it will be like living in a different culture to the one you grew up in yourself, and what it does to your children, and how they regard their environment, and how they feel. And so I really, really enjoyed listening to Urmi's perspective and insights. I love how she kind of, even though she felt like she wanted to rebel against her Bengali side and the way her parents tried to impose this on her, I love that she found her way to her culture. I mean, it's fascinating, isn't it? And yes, of course, not every parent is in a position to really think about what they're doing. It's a luxury to be able to actually think about a new country and culture before you actually move. So I'm very grateful that I had that. And even for me, it was challenging. And that is it for today. I am really looking forward to my next episode, and I know you will too. My guest will be Tanya Crossman, author and TCK advocate, with an absolute firecracker of an episode. So yeah, make sure you subscribe to this podcast if you haven't already done so you don't miss the next episode, and also the transition to the new chapter of this podcast, which will launch in the next few weeks. And yeah, so that's it. I hope your September is a good one. It will certainly pack a punch astrologically. There are a few eclipses, and eclipses always challenge us in different ways. Lots of changes, a lot of out with the old, in with the new. Take care, and see you next time.